Welcome to The Market That Moves America, a podcast from the National Center for the Middle Market. The Center is the leading source of knowledge, leadership, and innovative research on the middle market economy. Throughout our podcast, we will feature middle market leaders and stakeholders to hear their real-world perspectives on trends and emerging issues.
Cloud technology is becoming one of the most common technologies utilized at middle market companies, yet the various applications and functionalities are often misunderstood. The National Center for the Middle Market partnered with Google Cloud to explore this topic. Listen to hear two leaders describe that work and what it means for middle market digital transformation. Welcome to the Market That Moves America podcast. In today's discussion, we're going to be talking about the cloud. And no, I don't mean the weather, but rather the growing technology platform that's driving a number of business processes, not just data storage. Joining me today from Google Cloud is Darren Mowry, Managing Director, North America, and Lainey Marx, North America Sales Lead for Mid-Market Enterprise. Welcome, Darren and Laney.
Thanks so much, Doug. Great to be here.
Hi, everyone.
So first of all, can you each just tell us a little bit about your background, your experience in the technology sector, and then your current roles at Google Cloud? Darren, I'll start with you, and then we'll turn it over to Lainey.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, Doug, thanks for having us on the line. We've been really looking forward to this conversation. So I've been in the IT industry for a little over 25 years. I've had the opportunity to work with some really exciting large technology companies, whether that be Microsoft, Amazon Web Services, or now Google Cloud. But throughout all of my experience, my career has constantly centered and come back around to the middle market. And it's been a thrilling opportunity for me to see a series of technology advancements and new waves of innovation coming through the industry. I've just reached my 1.5-year anniversary here at Google Cloud. And as you had said in the intro, I have the opportunity to look over North America and get to work with folks like Lainey on bringing an unparalleled experience from Google Cloud to a set of really important customers, which definitely includes the middle market. So looking forward to our time together today.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks. Lainey?
Yeah, thanks, everyone. Excited to be here. About 18 years ago, I started working at the world's #1 beauty company and did very traditional product development, brand management, and marketing. But I was really lucky to work with some of the amazing people there to launch products all over the world with major retailers like Walmart and Target. I just celebrated my 9-year anniversary at Google last week. And in 2014, I joined the more traditional segment of the ads and telco, working with telco companies. And then after a brief stint at Google Fiber, I helped launch the sales team in 2016 for Google Cloud. It was really exciting in the early days, introducing Google Cloud platform and the brand really to consumers, sometimes for the first time. And over the last 7 years, it's been such a journey working with everyone from startups to some of our largest enterprise. But today, and over the last 1.5 years, really have had the honor of working with and leading our mid-market enterprise segment, working with some of our key channels. So that's it.
Awesome. Yeah, so excited about today's discussion. And on behalf of the center, I can say that we've really enjoyed the opportunity working with both of you and your teams. As our listeners probably know, we collaborated over the last year or so on a research project looking at cloud technology in the middle market and released that report here in March of 2023. So very excited about that. In fact, we have a webinar that's going to be coming up very soon. We're all having the chance to participate and talk a little bit about some of the things that are going on, particularly around AI in the middle market. So really, really looking forward to that. And it kind of leads into my first question for you, Darren, which is when you took this role, you reached out to the center. I remember, gosh, it was an email I think you sent to me or through our generic inbox in the spring of 2022, looking for more information about the middle market. What was the driving force behind that decision to focus on this specific segment of companies?
Yeah, it's a good question, Doug. And there were actually a few things behind my decision to connect with you. So first of all, I've actually been a consumer of the great content from you and the center for years, and actually including when I was building a different technology practice in a different company. It really helped me understand and unlock the pretty huge potential from a mid-market perspective. But I wanted to switch and change that model from a consumer to a contributor and a partner. And so that's why I wanted to lean in and learn more about some of these specific questions that we may want to ask and how we could actually work together to partner in research to actually help identify some key focus areas, not only to help us understand the market even more effectively, but frankly, help us be even better stewards in serving the middle market. So, I've had the opportunity to work in and around the middle market, as I had said, for a really long time. And I've always known that this market segment has this super massive potential. But frankly, it also tends to not get the attention sometimes and the investment from large technology companies. And I believe more today than ever that there's a really incredible innovation and need coming from the middle market. And we're frankly really excited to partner with you in the center to double down on that opportunity.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more there. As you kind of went through your career background, I mean, you've got a deep career across a number of different tech companies. When you think about the comparisons between enterprise or large companies, of course, the middle market, and then you've got small startup organizations, how do the technology needs of the middle market differ? In other words, what are some of the things that they might have in common with those other two segments, but also what makes them unique, particularly as you think about a platform like cloud?
Yeah, it's actually a really good question that Lainey, myself, and the team continue to learn and ask daily, because the first thing we have to remember is nothing is static, right? Everything is changing, especially nowadays when it comes to technology. The needs of this specific market segment are changing in what we really think is almost real time. So we're super committed to stay focused on those market needs and try to be as nimble and responsive as we can. And to your point, I think there are some commonalities across all of these types of organizations that we want to center on. So one, everyone is seeking to be successful, obviously. Everyone is seeking to differentiate from their competitors. And we're finding this overwhelming feedback that the whole concept of growth and acceleration and bringing a really excellent employee and customer experience is really top of mind. I have yet, Doug, to ever meet a CEO who says that those top of mind items aren't most critical to her, right? And so those things absolutely continue to stay consistent. With those commonalities in mind, though, there are definitely a number of what I think are really important differences that I'll quickly touch on. For example, enterprises and middle market companies typically have common business and technology requirements. But the key difference, and you guys have actually helped me really understand this, is the scale of those requirements may be different, right? Middle market companies face enterprise challenges, the same challenges as many of their big brother and big sister global enterprises may face. But experience is telling us that those middle market companies may have less internal capabilities and resources compared to their global brothers and sisters to address those problems. Now, conversely, we work a lot with startups, and those startups tend to be engineering-led organizations where you can imagine the founders and the senior leaders are many times the lead developers and the architects. They're actually putting hands on keyboards and bringing ideas to life. Time really tends to be their most scarce resource in those cases. And we work with those organizations in a way that's super kind of tech forward, high paced, and really focused on, getting them using technology as quickly as possible. So to be even more specific, what I'll say, Doug, is we're finding in the middle market as well as global enterprises that these organizations really want to have a partnership aspect, meaning they want to look beyond the ones and the zeros. And we need to be talking about outcomes. We need to be talking about customer experiences, employee experiences, driving top line revenue, reducing costs. So while in parts of the market, we want to talk a lot about exciting tech, my opinion in the middle market is we have to be really clear and again, work in that partnership model to help decision makers in these middle market companies know what they're going to get, know what they're going to be able to deliver by adopting this new technology. And I would say that's unique.
Yeah, I think that's spot on. I mean, our experience has been, and you kind of touched on this, but we have a saying that we use quite frequently, which is middle market companies have big company problems with small company resources to address them.
Exactly.
And that is why it's so critical to find, trusted advisors and partners who can really help address how do I start? Where do I start? What are the best practices and approaches as they start down this road? And that's a good segue. Lainey, I want to throw this next question at you as the leader of the middle market sales team at Google Cloud. What are some of those messages and information and tools that you're sharing with your team and your team is using to effectively talk to a lot of these businesses across the country?
Yeah, it's a great question, Doug. So first and foremost, the main message to our team of Googlers is that their guiding light is always first and foremost their customer. I mean, our goal and our mission is to support them and solve real business problems, as you just mentioned, that they have those problems, but maybe the not enough resources. So through our technology, and honestly, that can mean different things for different customers. So for example, a retailer may want to leverage the latest in AI with Google and our recommendation system for kind of like the latest in models to help that customer buying experience even be better. We also help support banks in the financial services industry with the latest access for proactive security warnings or things that help for early threat detection. And honestly, we work with hospital systems and their frontline workers and how they need to have a consistent email and chat experience across their phone or computer or tablet, wherever they are within the hospital. So really just solving real world problems they need to have. So that's kind of first. Everything we do is brought back to the customer and those business needs. In terms of the tools and information, we really have two major ways we help our teams work more effectively with our clients. First, we have access to all things that Google can provide. Our teams act like windows into the world of all things Google and Alphabet universe that they can bring in terms of innovation, culture, and technology all in one place. And then second, we have a very strong go-to-market with our channel ecosystem, because at the end of the day, as you mentioned, Google does provide innovative technology, but these partners really help bring it to life for these mid-market customers. So one of the things that I've learned this year, especially working with these mid-market enterprises, they really need a couple of things. One, a basic understanding and access to the technology in a simple and concise way. And two, a way to bring this technology to life in kind of the real world of their day-to-day business. And as Darren mentioned, these organizations are really tightly run and focused on the business needs. So the goal here is really to free up their time and their resources so they can go focus on the business and let Google focus on the underlying technology that supports that business.
Yep.
This is actually one of the key insights that we learned from the study, and I think what we'll see in the mid-market indicator, that really people and resources are still the number one area where those businesses want to invest. So our goal is to help them enable those resources so they can be as efficient as possible and bring value. And really the last thing I'll say on the topic is that we know from our research that we did with the National Center of Mid-Market that 92% of those mid-market companies surveyed do believe that cloud is the way forward. And I believe the words they used were essential and game changer. So there's really zero doubt in my mind that this is the future. These CIOs know it as well. It's just a matter of how you move, how quickly you get there and the full organization on board and which cloud partners you select to lead you on this journey.
Yeah, so let me kind of tag on to that comment, Lainey. Of course, research data is great, thought leadership and insights are great, but as you and your team are out actually talking to these businesses, I really think there's nothing that can replicate, having individual conversations with your clients and kind of understanding their challenges and concerns. Are you hearing reservations or things that are keeping them up at night, whether it's cloud specific or just technology in general?
Yeah, I mean, there's really three main challenges or reservations when it comes to cloud. And we're hearing this, we heard this both in the study and we hear this day to day. And we just mentioned, we know this is the direction of the future. And if organizations want to future-proof their business, cloud is the way forward. But, that's not to say there aren't going to be challenges along the way. The good news is that this journey to the cloud began originally in 2008 for Google Cloud. But really in the last 5 years, we've learned so much how to overcome these obstacles. So kind of take it one by one. So first, security. And, we touched on this a lot in the study, but I'll be more specific. The hesitation around data security, whether it's, will my data be secure from the cloud provider themselves and or the rest of the world? So I believe this is at the heart of the security question and about being the biggest inhibitor for, moving faster or more to the cloud. In one way, you really have to respect these organizations. They have built and layered on these technology solutions over the last 20 plus years. However, this kind of band-aid approach may not have been able to keep up with the more sophisticated security challenges that 99% of the time when you hear about these breaches, it's from a on-prem or maybe a homegrown solution. So someone like Google, who has thousands of security engineers and invested billions of dollars into this space, it's why that it is one of the number one benefits that we found in the study for why they moved to the cloud. Mm-hmm. Second, and largest hesitation is education and enablement. One of the number one requests we get around from CIOs is around training and enablement of the people within their enterprises. So no one likes change, and moving to the cloud is probably one of the largest changes an IT organization can go through. So, how do we make it bite-sized for them? No one honestly is doing cloud transformations in one fell swoop. They start small with a use case, a workload. They start to see the benefits and eventually get there. But either way, training is a big part of the hesitation, but honestly, one of the easier things to overcome. And then lastly, AI. We cannot lose sight of the crucial time that we're in at this very moment. CIOs of these mid-market companies are telling me all the time, my board has called my CEO and he or she has called me and they're asking me, what is our AI strategy? And I need to get an answer to them like yesterday. So what we're seeing now, regardless of these potential hesitations that were lingering, this AI revolution has absolutely accelerated all companies, mid-market included, towards the cloud for multiple reasons. And AI might be the driving force behind it. But what I think we'll see, all of these benefits come together: productivity, time, efficiency, giving time back to those valuable engineers to go develop kind of revenue, not really manage infrastructure. It's super exciting, and now the race to the cloud couldn't be any more on than it is right now.
Yeah, that's great. So Darren, you already mentioned some of the goals and objectives of working with the NCMM, but this was the first time that Google Cloud has partnered with a university-based research organization like us. Why was conducting this research so important for your organization?
Yeah, Doug, while we're really excited about the partnership, both to prove out how this work can really help inform Alphabet and Google, we also do believe that it's the beginning of something bigger, something broader. As I said, nothing is static, everything is dynamic. And so we wanted to take this first step with you. While we spend a lot of time, as you can imagine, as an organization, engaging with and listening to our customers, the way that we viewed this was really this research gave us an opportunity to gain much broader, like market level insights from just a larger cross section of the middle market. And we also see this opportunity as a really, really, really great opportunity to fine tune and target that research on really specific areas of curiosity. Lastly, and probably not surprisingly, we're really frankly proud to be able to call you guys our partners. We not only want to learn from the process, but you've been at this for a very long time. As I said, I've been a consumer of what you guys have created for quite some time. And we want to also frankly signal to the broader market that Google Cloud is invested. We care deeply about what's happening in the middle market, and we're just at the very beginning of a series of big investments that we think are going to unlock some pretty great results for this market segment.
Yeah, the same goes for us as well. I mean, in fact, we've been talking about this research and this collaboration quite a bit over the last couple months. We're going to be at some events here over the summer that are focused specifically on digital transformation. And a lot of this research that we did together is serving as kind of the backbone of those presentations. Lainey, you threw out some of the statistics from the study. You probably know them better than we do at this point. Were there things in the research data that you found either surprising or powerful or particularly interesting as you mentioned some of those tools that you're equipping your sales teams with?
Doug, I'm not going to lie. I think I have the whole study memorized by heart.
Of course.
On a daily basis. But for me, the most insightful data point from the study was that the companies with cloud, they're more integrated across various functions of their organization, that was directly related to the companies that were growing faster than their peer sets. And to me, this tells me two things. More integration with cloud and access for key stakeholders across the organization, not just IT, will lead to more efficient and employees more efficiently work and employees and better collaboration. We see it all of the time, whether it's through workspace collaboration tools or like a Looker, business intelligence or data analysis. Everyone can access everything across the organization and really takes these organizations to be more forward thinking and innovative. The second thing this tells me is that these early adopters and early majority that to more fully adopt cloud across the organization have really shifted the way they work so that their engineering resources, technical resources are spending more time developing maybe the latest software application or improving their customer call center, the better for the company. In other words, putting the right resources for revenue generating and business critical opportunities lead to faster growth in the competition. And I know, this research hasn't come out, but I'll be really interested in the mid-year indicator. How are they thinking about AI? I'd be really curious the next time we do this, if the organizations in the middle market who adopted AI earlier on, will they also be the ones in the next wave of companies that are growing the fastest? So something tells me the answer is they will be, but we'll see what the research says.
Yeah, that's a great segue over to my next question for Darren, which is thinking about the future of cloud technology. What are going to be some of the emerging trends and opportunities and maybe even potential challenges? I mean, we've already mentioned AI at least several times in this quick discussion. I was at a conference last week out in California. Every single session, keynotes, breakout, generative AI was the leading topic. And
Absolutely.
So we know it's out there. Lainey alluded to the fact that we're in the process right now of collecting data on this in our middle market indicator survey, which I think is going to be really, really interesting to see that. But what are some other things, Darren, that if you could share, things to look for down the road?
Well, I definitely can't not talk about AI, but I'll put that back a little bit and come back around to it, because I think you heard Lainey a moment ago talk about the importance of security. And what I really found profound in the data and the research, as Lainey really clearly had talked about, is that security is the biggest draw, but also the biggest concern, right? So I think that will continue to be the reality in the cloud, especially for middle market companies. As Lainey said, we've got a lot of resources. We've been doing this for a very long time. We're extremely confident in our security position, but we also can appreciate the fact that there is trust associated with cloud computing, and trust is earned. And so I think security will continue to be an element where you'll see us invest and innovate, and you'll see us actually continue to release some pretty incredible innovations in that space as well. One area that we haven't spent as much time talking about today, but I want to make sure and get on the agenda, Doug, is this concept of data, right? So we're seeing this continued really strong evolution towards better use of organizational data to make even better decisions, right? And so while we focus a lot on real-time analytics over the years, we find that organizations continue to face these challenges with this disparate silos, right? So data is all over the organization. It's in different formats. It's in different standards. And it makes it really difficult for organizations of all sizes, but especially the middle market, to integrate and make sense and kind of put real-time decision-making and predictive decisions behind that. And so we absolutely will continue to see waves of interest, waves of engagement, massive investment from Google and Google Cloud to help solve that data problem. The data problem leads to two other things that I'll quickly touch on, Doug, and before I talk about AI. So one is, we actually don't believe that everything should move to the cloud. And you may be surprised to hear me say that, but when we're working across middle market companies, we really want to partner to truly assess what those enterprise applications are and where should they be. And what I mean by that is some applications, when we work with organizations in the middle market, they help us understand that some of these apps have low usage, they may have a shorter shelf life. And when we all sit down and say, is it worth the investment to refactor and move? The answer is no. Let those applications stay where they are. Now, on the other hand, there are going to be an entire set of enterprise applications that do warrant deep exploration, kind of reinvention, thinking about retooling. And so what I really want to call out is this key trend in middle market companies that, frankly, we should be very leery, all of us, middle market organizations, as well as hyperscalers, that no one should go into the model of everything must move to the cloud. We believe that that's antiquated. We don't believe it meets the modern needs of modern organizations. And that was a recommendation in the early days of cloud. And in fact, you may even still hear this in some pockets of the industry. Modern demands of organizations really tell us that this is an open multi-cloud world where middle market companies need to really make really well-informed, well-factored decisions, and their role in that, as do our partners. And then obviously, Doug, as I said, I got to AI really quickly. Lainey had talked about this generational shift in computing, and that's the term that we don't just say, we deeply mean with every cell in our body. And what we mean by that is, while we're at the very early days, this AI concept is going to move much further beyond where much of us are focusing right now, right? As you said, generative AI, you were at your conference. Many of us see the media attention being placed to search-based generative AI. And don't get me wrong, we're super passionate at Google about an extremely compelling Google search, right, based on advancements in AI. But I really want to focus here that with mid-market companies, our belief is that AI extends far beyond the topic of search, right? And we're working with middle market organizations to, as Lainey said, first really make sure we have a purpose-built, future-proofed AI strategy. When we look across the market, we see AI disruptors, meaning organizations that are deep down in the AI-centric intellectual property of AI. They're building large language models. They're inventing things that have never been seen before. But we also see on the other side of the spectrum, a whole set of organizations that are trying to be AI-powered, or what we're calling AI explorers, meaning they're asking themselves, what is possible with the intelligent use of AI? But in those cases, again, as I said a moment ago, we don't want to dive right into the tech. We want to actually partner to say, what are the use cases and the business problems that we could solve most effectively with artificial intelligence? And let's kind of walk this journey together. So while we're super energized, we're deeply passionate about AI, we're taking a very methodical, a very responsible approach to this new technology. And we want to bring that kind of experience to the middle market as well, Doug.
Yeah, and one thing I keep seeing over and over is like Google Cloud statement on innovating boldly but responsibly. And I think that's pretty important to keep in mind as well, particularly for middle market companies, right?
It absolutely is. I mean, again, at the end of the day, AI is a super advanced way of making decisions from data, right? So that's why I wanted to talk about data there for a moment, is AI doesn't exist unless we all have a thoughtful approach about the data that the artificial intelligence is then using to make decisions. And so that's where, again, it's very important that all of us think about search-based AI, things like ChatGPT or our version, Bard. All of those are very interesting, but they're consumer-focused solutions. We want to be clear with mid-market organizations that we have the capability to bring the same sort of dazzling experience that they may get from that kind of search-oriented generative AI, but we're able to do that by putting walls around your data, right? Actually making your data the data source that the AI is then using, and ensuring that that data is just that. It's your data. You manage it. You control it. Google has no access to it. No one else does. That's where we get excited about AI, Doug, and that's where we think AI is truly going to unlock some potential for middle market companies.
Yeah. So my last question, I'd like for each of you to comment on this if you could, and this would be our closing kind of area to explore, and that would be advice that you would give to middle market leaders who may be struggling or confused or overwhelmed, right? I mean, it could be all of the above as they think about their own technology. What would be some things that you would say to those leaders to say, this is what you should be doing and thinking, particularly given a lot of the uncertainty that's out there right now in the macro economy, but more specifically, the things that we here at the center are, these things are great. We see the potential and we see the opportunity. We just don't know where we should be starting. What would each of you kind of say to those companies who are kind of struggling with that question right now?
Lainey, go ahead.
Yeah, I'll start. I mean, it's one of the aspects of the research that I loved, and Doug knows this because I was always begging him to bring it up to the top of the presentations, and it's at the back, but it's really like so helpful. And I think about this as practical advice for how key considerations for moving to the cloud. First, thoughtfully define your approach. Whether you work with Google or a partner, really identify that first use case and, run a TCO analysis, what makes sense to get started, right? Second, you have to hit the security question head on and get it all out on the table, see what's possible and really understand the security benefits. And it's, overcome that early on. Third, leverage the right resources. So this goes back to working smarter, not harder, and leveraging the ecosystem that we have in Google and our partners to help you go get there faster and more efficiently. Do not, go it alone. Next, focus on the full cloud integration. I talked about this earlier from the research, but we know the more integrated equals more growth. So why not think about vast use cases across the organization, not just the IT, and think about lines of business, marketing, operations, logistics, customer service. It's honestly endless. Fifth, I would say move away, and Darren just touched on this, from relying on one single cloud. We didn't talk about this in the hesitation section, but I would absolutely add this as a fourth dimension. Customers in the mid-market are fearful of the lock-in and afraid that they will no longer have the freedom to do and choose the best cloud for the right use. So some cloud providers are known for more of a lock-in approach, and we hear from this today from our customers. But to avoid this, move away from one cloud and use the right solution for the right problem. And then lastly, turn that technical debt into new revenue streams. You mentioned the environment that we're in, Doug, so we talked about this a bit, but it's all about moving the right resources to where they can be more impactful to help the top line. And cloud can free you up to do this in one of those real value adds of the cloud. And I know this wasn't part of the research, and I'm going to say it one more time. There's one more I would add. This, clearly have a defined AI and ML strategy and use case. And if you haven't already started experimenting with what's possible, obviously I encourage you to do that with Google and reach out, but really get started on your enterprise ready AI platform so that you can help drive, for your company, that AI first vision for your organization.
Yeah. Darren, what would you add?
Yeah, I mean, I think Lainey nailed it. I'd say it's really important to have a cloud strategy, as we've kept saying over the course of our podcast today. Staying focused on outcomes is really what enables us to work together to ensure that these investments are aligned to these strategic priorities and delivering both the top line and the bottom line results that we're expecting. The importance of these outcomes for the business should then prioritize all the investments and the projects that we want to take on together. As Lainey had said, we're spending a lot of time with mid-market executives and boards to create this multi-factor, multi-cloud strategy that includes what we talked about today. Mm-hmm. What's the application modernization and migration component? Do you have a cloud-first strategy, and what does that look like for new applications? What is your data strategy? What's your security strategy? And as we've clearly said, have a perspective around AI. I mean, at the end of the day, Doug, what I'd say is beware of science experiments where the focus has lost focus on outcomes and it's become more about shiny objects. Sure. Stay focused on business outcomes, on technology outcomes, and on the results that all these efforts are going to create for employees and for customers. And that's what shows us time and time again that it's a winning combination.
Right. Well, these have been some really powerful insights and observations and really takeaways and food for thought for our listeners. I think we've only scratched the surface of a lot of the things we talked about today. And again, for those listeners that want to hear more, particularly around the topic of AI, I would have everybody be on the lookout for the webinar that's going to be coming up. I'm really excited to participate that and hopefully bring some of this new MMI data to that conversation. Darren, Laney, appreciate your time. It's been great having you on the Market That Moves America today.
Thanks so much, Doug.
Thanks, Doug. It's been a pleasure.
For more information about Google Cloud, visit their website, cloud.google.com, and thank you very much.
Thank you for listening to The Market That Moves America. Never miss a new episode by subscribing anywhere podcasts can be found. You can also subscribe to our email newsletter at middlemarketcenter.org.